Okay, so Rowell, thanks for taking the time on joining this episode on this podcast. And I would like to start by asking how you got started into IT.
Sure. Yeah. That's that started off a long time ago. So I actually went to a school called ITT Tech. I don't know if a lot of people know what that is, but it's no longer around.
Mm.
And when I was at ITT, I wasn't in an IT field yet. I was still trying to make my way in, and at that time it was pretty hard to get in without the experience, right? I think it's still the same way, hard to get an IT job without any kind of experience. And so I actually started with Target, and not as like an employee at the corporate office, but I went into their tech area, where they sell all the laptops
Mm.
and games. So I started there. I figured if I can try to sell laptops and tablets, I could somehow translate that into a position that I did want in the future. So I started off there for a year, and then I started applying for help desk roles. And so the way I would try to position myself as somebody who didn't have the experience is I would just say, "Hey, I'm around technology all the time,
Mm.
and I just like to help people." And so that kind of led me to my first help desk position at a nonprofit, and that's where I really learned a lot. I did practice a lot of interviewing skills and how to build a good resume, and so I think that really helped me get in. And then it just kind of made sense with me and that company, and I was there for quite a while, and I think like five years maybe, on and off,
Mm.
and they really helped teach me. There was somebody there who mentored me in systems administration while I did help desk, and I always credit help desk to a lot of what I do today, because I know nowadays most people try to skip help desk,
Hmm.
and I feel like that's a really good start. It's kind of like a restaurant where they put you in to clean the dishes first. You
Okay.
kind of put in your time. Like help desk is one of those where you put in your time, but you do learn a lot, especially with the end users. So that's where I got my start, is doing help desk, fixing computer problems. Um, every once in a while, getting some experience with Windows Server, because the sysadmin there at the time was willing to show me what he was working on, and I got my first chance of looking at a firewall, which was a WatchGuard firewall. All I remember it was red, and so that's where I got my tech start.
Okay, so just providing support and then uh, trying to grow
Mhm.
as the opportunity would come. And you stayed in that company at the same company doing the same task, and then after some time, what, you quit? What happened?
Yeah, I stayed there, I think, initially for 2 years, and then I went. I was doing like a side gig with some marketing company where I helped um, bring out the name for Intel and their CPUs. Where I would go to places like Best Buy and Circuit City, and
Mm.
I would explain to people what Intel processors were and how they were better than their competitor, which was AMD. And so I was just kind of there as a marketer, but I understood CPUs and what it meant to people if they were trying to buy computers. And that led me to creating a friend with somebody there who was kind of the leader of the team. And
Mm.
he was also working at a different company as a technician. So this gig was usually just on Saturdays and Sundays. And then he asked me to apply for a IT support role at a different company, an internet marketing company. And so I ended up joining that team where we just put together a lot of computers, kind of same kind of thing. So I was just building up my help desk
Mm.
expertise. And then I actually did end up going back to my original company as a sysadmin, because
Mm.
even at that other company, the internet marketing company, I would shadow the sysadmin. I would always ask him questions. And at when I had transitioned to the second company, I learned that instead of Windows, these guys use a lot of Linux. So I was just trying to learn, like, what's the difference with Linux? What can you do with it? He showed me all these neat things, and I just got a lot of interest in doing that. And
Mm.
so that brought me towards a direction of, hey, let me do systems administration. And so when my previous company had that role open because my mentor had, I guess, got promoted or went to a different position, then I applied for that role, and I ended up becoming the systems administrator there. And that's where I really got hands on with networking and server administration, with like
Mm.
Windows, Active Directory, file servers, that kind of thing, with multiple offices. So I was going out to different cities in the United States, just deploying servers and setting up laptops, the whole shebang.
So you're doing, I believe nowadays it's called enterprise, but you're looking at servers,
Mm-hmm.
network security. At that time, did you have any certification or was just learn as you do?
Well, as I went through school, I got an A+ and a Network Plus, and at that time they were forever certs, right? We don't nowadays, we got to recertify every 3 years. I still hold those two certifications over 10 years ago. I would say
Hmm.
maybe over 20 years ago. I still have those, and those are the certs that I had.
Okay, so you got those certs and they kind of helped you for the job you were doing at the time.
Yeah, and the way that I had approached the certifications was going for a certification that would get me the role that I wanted. And
Hmm.
what I would advise people to do is, if you're looking to, become a network engineer, look at certifications that would get you to become a network engineer. So in at the time when I was doing help desk, I knew I was putting troubleshooting a lot of computers, the hardware, putting them together. So I went with the A+. So I got the A+, then I got the help desk role.
Hmm.
And then as I was doing more systems administration, I ended up wanting to do more networking, but I didn't have the skill set, or at least some of the knowledge for networking. So that's when I went with a Network Plus, to at least give me that solid foundation of what networking is, but not necessarily tied to a specific vendor. And so that's how I
Hmm.
got started before I went on to the next step.
Okay, that's very interesting because I talk to a lot of students of mine and also friends of people to reach out to me on the network, and they don't have any clue, any idea on why they should do the certification, which certification they should choose. And it looks like, using your example, is if I'm doing this and I want to get to that next level, I should choose the path or the certification that will give me the opportunity. It's not going to give me like the job, but probably it's going to give me the opportunity to be in that position, right?
Correct. Yeah. And the way I would view them is, all right, if I have to compete with somebody who does not have the certifications or is in the same amount of years of experience as me, coming from help desk, and I was applying for a sysadmin role, I need to have a one up in
Mm.
order to make it to through the hiring process, and maybe get an interview. And so that was my way of trying to at least move up that
Mm.
selection list, but
Okay.
also try to tie in what I'm doing at work with the
Mm.
certification. So that way it's not just purely only a certification that I'm coming in with.
Okay. So that's actually a great advice because people normally they just, some of them are just collecting certification just because
Yeah.
it's not aligned with a professional career. Is like, okay, we
Mhm.
have this new Cisco cert, we have this new Juniper cert, and oh, I gotta grab it. It's for free, but it's not aligned with anything that you're doing at this company, or you don't have any plan at all to use
Yeah.
in the future. So
Yeah, you have to go in there with a plan, right? There's a lot of candidates out there applying, like a lot. Back when I was applying, we didn't have like the LinkedIn where
yeah,
you can just one button apply, and now there's thousands of people applying. And that
yeah.
makes it difficult for hiring managers. Like even when I do hiring, I don't like that kind of stuff because it's so hard to filter through all the people. Who am I
Mm.
looking for? And so when I look at a resume and I see a slew, certification stew, all of
Hmm.
them, and let's say they're applying for a network engineer, but you're listing certifications like Red Hat certification, Windows certification, Linux certification, I automatically write that off. I just go, this has nothing to do with what I'm trying to hire for. So therefore,
Yeah.
I'll go with somebody who maybe just only lists the the networking certifications. And so what I would recommend to people is when you are applying, look at the job description, and before you submit your resume, remove
Mm.
everything that doesn't relate to that job description. It
Okay.
makes it easier for the person looking at the resume to sift through all the stuff that doesn't matter.
Okay, so guys, I hope you take note of this. So create a customized CV or resume
Yeah.
for the position you're applying. So even if you are CC something, even if you are a Linux expert, but if you're applying for a web developer role, just remove, because that's going to hurt you
Yeah. It actually helped.
instead of helping you, right?
Yeah, because at some point, for some years, I always had SCCM as experience that I had in my resume.
Mm,
And guess what? I always had recruiters coming to me for SCCM, but what
mm.
they didn't know is I hated SCCM. I didn't want to do SCCM, so I just removed it from my resume altogether, removed it from my LinkedIn, and now no one reaches me about it. So if you
Okay.
you, you gotta look the part when you're applying.
Okay, awesome. So, what happened next in your professional career?
Yeah, I ended up. What did I do? I ended up becoming. I took on this one role where I just, as you go up in your career, you always want to get more pay, right?
Yeah.
I was trying to get a specific pay at the time. I think I was trying to get to like 80,000 US dollars a year, and
Mm,
the position I was at, just they weren't going to give it to me. And so during this time period, I was more focused on salary, and so I took a role over at a finance company, or an investing company, and they
mm,
just needed some an IT support like lead, or I forgot what it is. It wasn't a low level IT support. They gave it a higher title.
mm,
But when I had joined, I realized that it was actually more um, worse than what I had done at my previous jobs. I didn't like the work that was being done. It was more like troubleshooting Excel sheets because they were failing and they needed backups and all that stuff. I mean,
mm,
it's important, but I had gone through that already. That I was really wanting to do networking,
mm,
and I got the higher salary, but I had regretted taking it. Right, so it's one of those where if you're going to go for
mm,
salary, you might get a position that you don't like, but if you go for the job you like, you'll actually be more happier. And so
mm,
after 3 months, I had quit, and I got lucky because a recruiter reached out to me saying, "Hey, I got this role over here at this managed service provider,"
mm.
and I had from there jumped from like IT support or systems administrator to IT manager. But the IT manager was more like putting me into a client location. I kind of managed all of IT there. I didn't really manage people, and
Okay.
and that's where I really started getting more into Cisco networking and distributed sites where there was a lot of different locations, a lot of switches. Got into Cisco ASA firewalls. I still manage servers, but that's where I got into VMware and virtualization. And so I really liked it, and I also really liked the company. So not only did I get a pay bump, a small one,
Mm,
after the initial one, or the
mm-hmm.
previous one, but I also started working with technology that I did want to work with, and also really good managers that I enjoyed working for, and really good coworkers that I liked working for.
So you got like the best of both worlds, like doing
Yeah,
what you love, what you wanted, and financially you are a little bit happy,
yeah.
right?
So you get a little bit of everything. They keep you
Mm-hmm.
interested with the work that you're doing, and it was very different from my previous jobs, because when you work at a company, you're usually at that one company doing the same thing at that one company. At
Yeah.
a managed service provider, what's really great about that is it really challenges you, but it
Mm,
increases your experience dramatically, because not only would you be working with one environment, you could then be working on a different environment. So your experience actually, I want to say, like compounds, because
yeah.
you're seeing so many different kinds of installations.
Yeah, this is something that I actually recommend people. If you want to start faster your career, go to MSP or ISP. They have a
Yeah.
lot of problems,
There's
and
a lot of problems, but a
yeah,
lot of times you got to be careful too with MSPs because you could easily just get burnt out because they could be a very very lean team, but then the
hmm
work just keeps piling on, right? So instead of one environment where you're dealing with the tickets for that environment, now you're dealing with maybe 3, 4, or even more environments, all the tickets coming in, all the
yeah,
different issues you got to deal with. So
hmm
again, it becomes that balance, right? And as I've gone through all my work experience nowadays, I'm more about the work life balance. And, here and there I'll work an evening or a
mm.
weekend, but I value my time more now.
So I believe this comes with experience, right?
Yeah, I mean, uh it just depends. Life changes, and
hmm
your priorities change over time, and after you've developed enough experience. Like nowadays I don't really care so much about certifications. I only take them when I need to.
Mm.
um
Okay,
but I
so
still learn. But it doesn't
you're
mean
still
that I have to
learning.
go take it.
Okay, so this is, and we're going to dive deeper into these certifications versus training.
Yeah,
During this time in MSP environment, you are dealing with different vendors, different technologies, different scenarios,
yeah,
and you had to be, I wouldn't say expert, but you had to be good on doing what you were doing. And there is like this discussion that you should just focus on learning one specific technology, one specific vendor, versus like trying to be good at networking, security, virtualization.
hmm
What is your approach on this? Because
so
you
my
were in this environment, right?
yeah,
You were dealing with different things. It's not like, oh, you're just going to manage routers, just
yeah,
switches, just firewalls. In an MSP, oh, you know how to type, use the keyboard, take it,
yeah,
right? So, and out there are many people that say, no, that's not the way to work. You shouldn't work like this. So I want to get your opinion on this. Whether, what do you think? Is it something that it's good or it's not good to be good? Is it possible to be good in different technologies? So what's your approach on this?
yeah. I think it's possible to be good at multiple technologies. Just so people know, my focus is Wi-Fi, enterprise Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
That's what I specialize in, but it doesn't mean I don't know anything else about the network stack and security. I highly recommend people take a T approach, right? So draw out a T. You can be broad, right? You can do security, firewalls. I mean, security is its own thing, right? There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
to security,
Yeah.
but let's just say security, firewall, storage, help desk. What else? Networking, Wi-Fi.
Working virtualization, cloud.
Yeah, cloud, virtual. I know enough about every single one of those. So that makes me more generalized, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I pick one focus. So Wi-Fi is there, it's going to be in the middle, and then I
Mm.
do a T. So I come down the line and I really expand my focus in that specific technology. Now, the
Okay.
reason why I recommend that is because that makes you more valuable, right? Let's say I am in an organization and there's 10 other IT people. Let's call them all network engineers.
Mm.
Those network engineers might just be focused on layer two, right? They just know switching.
Yeah.
Um, I might be more of a T. I know switching, I know routing, I know Wi-Fi. So they may put me as the Wi-Fi specialist. So I've got that T going on with the Wi-Fi specialist. But let's say my coworker decides to go on vacation and he's the BGP expert. But then now we have this issue with BGP. We're not going to call him. He's, you know, middle of nowhere on an island with no cellular at
Mm-hmm.
all. And so I can go, hey, I know enough about BGP to be dangerous, but I'm not going to bring it down, but I know how to at least troubleshoot. I understand the basics of BGP. And let me look at what path attributes are being used. I know how to log on to the router and check the routes. Um, that makes me a little bit more valuable than
Mm.
somebody who doesn't have that the range, but also the specialty. Like you don't have to be an expert in every single one, but if you can have at least some foundational knowledge in each of the areas, and you know how to think through and plan properly, you can actually go pretty far without being an expert in that field. So even when it comes to me helping clients and they're like, hey, you know, we can't access this this VM in AWS from one of our facilities. And I just know, like, all right, your Wi-Fi connection's good, you're on the network, you can't reach that site. Okay, so then now I have to get routing involved and VPN and all that. But then they don't, from there I can just say, hey, I see it leaving the firewall, going through the tunnel to AWS. I can either just, you know, wipe my hands clean of that situation and be like, that's all you know, it's AWS. But then they might say, well, we're not actually good at AWS. Can you help us? Then I can go, well, I know enough about cloud. I don't have an AWS networking certification. Doesn't mean I need to have it, but I can show some value to them and be like, all right, let me look at your screen and see what you're doing and how you're connecting this device. And then using fundamental networking, I can go, oh, you know what, that interface for that EC2 instance is not on the right subnet, or the security group for that EC2 instance isn't allowing HTTPS from these networks. See, I don't have an AWS cert. I happen to know what those are.
Buckets, this kind of thing. So that's fundamental, as you said. Just have a broad understanding, fundamental, and dive deeper into one technology.
Pick one that you might like. Just take a stab at it, right? I know if you're just starting out, you might not know what you like. So you just kind of have to pick a track. You can kind of use a certification track as an example of which direction you want to go. You want to go data center? Maybe go take a stab at data center. Go get a certification. Was the content interesting to you? No. Then don't take the cert if you don't like it. Go look at some other technology. Maybe it's routing. A lot of people love routing, or security, firewalls. So I like all of those. Sometimes I have more of a specialty. Like I do a lot of Palo Alto, so I tend to have a lot of knowledge in how Palo Alto firewalls work and how to configure things, even though my specialty is Wi-Fi.
Okay, so let's break down this thing of yours with certifications. So at some point, they were really important for you. And as you said, you normally, you took it whenever you felt like this is aligned with my professional career. And why so many different vendors? Because Palo Alto, Juniper, how come?
So nowadays I take certifications when I want to take it. And most of the time it's because I need to fulfill a partner requirement. So in my business, I am a partner for like all these vendors, Palo Alto, Cisco, Juniper, and to maintain a certain status or to maintain compliance, you have to have certifications. Okay. So for me, I have to have at least one for each of these. And so that's why I take those certifications. Now, more recently, I took like 3 Juniper certifications at one time at a event. That was only because they were offering it for free. So I just took advantage of it. I was like, I don't need a study. I just want to take the exam and see if I pass. If I pass, that's great. Yeah. I saved, I don't know how much certifications are anymore. $250 per exam. Something each like voucher, that. Right? So maybe I saved $750. That's great. And so that's why I took it. And then a lot of times it's more of, okay, what do I need to renew and which ones am I going to keep? So the one that I will always keep right now is my CWNE certification, the wireless networking expert one. And I just have to be able to renew that with the requirements that they have for renewal.
Okay. So again, this is your strategy. You don't renew all of them.
No,
because you.
Yeah, like my CCNA is already expired. My Palo Alto certs are expired. The only ones I have that are not expired are the A+, Network Plus, CWNE, and then the most recent ones I took for Juniper, the associate level Mist AI specialist, Mist AI wireless, and the professional level missed AI.
Okay, so you're doing your job at this MSP, and at some point start to started another gig, something like this, and you start like working for yourself as a freelance.
Yeah. It actually started off as blogging. So
Hmm.
my company is called Packet Six, and it started off as a blog. And so as I started working at this MSP, this is when I started my focus in Wi-Fi. I had learned, like, when I started using Wi-Fi, I knew that no one knew Wi-Fi,
Hmm.
and I just took it upon myself as a challenge. Like, what don't I know Wi-Fi? Since nobody knows Wi-Fi, there's no Wi-Fi specials. I will learn Wi-Fi. And so I went down that track of learning Wi-Fi, how it works, and I started writing about it.
Hmm.
And so Packet Six started off as a blog, and eventually, like, someone got to a post and was like, "Hey, do you do any stuff on the side? And could you help us with this wireless controller?" And I said, "Yeah." And then after that, that was pretty successful for me. I had, one gig here and then a second gig there, and I thought, okay, the blogging thing's actually working pretty well with SEO. Why don't I
Hmm.
just turn it now into a consulting website, keep writing, and that way when people land on the website, they see that I offer services, and that's kind of how that got started.
Hmm. That's
And I did
interesting.
that while working at an MSP. So is it hard? Yes, because my time was during the day for the MSP, so I would have to spend time after I was done with work and evenings or weekends to go do client work. So I'd have to take on clients that were okay with that.
So this was at the same time you were already making content on YouTube.
No, I actually don't know when I started with YouTube. I was like, I'm very on and off with YouTube.
Okay. Okay. But the blog is something that you started really and you keep to this day.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what started as a side hustle, how is it now? How is Packet Six?
It's not so much a side hustle anymore, right? When you think of side hustle, there's usually people who do it on their own, right? You would think I'm the only guy. I actually have a team. So we've got like 3 engineers, and they do the same thing that I would do. I mentor them,
Hmm.
guide them on how to approach things. They do the work. Um, and yeah, it's a real company.
Okay, so as I said, so I'm at this early stage as well with side hustle. So if you could like give a little bit some of the lessons that you learned. So for example, how you start to get the contracts.
Yeah.
So people were like inbound marketing, right? People were reaching out to you,
Yeah.
but how do you scale from that? So what were the initial problems that you had before? Okay, this is a real company. This is something that I really have to go serious on this one.
Yeah, when companies that you may look up to, or are very well known, and they start asking to work with you, that's when it gets a little bit more serious. And so for me, it was, I've always been in some sort of like business related. I actually used to run my own business as a wedding photographer, so I had some business experience.
Mm,
And so doing consulting though is a little bit different, because one, when you're doing a side hustle and it's IT, and my main hustle is actually IT as well, those two can conflict. And
mm,
sometimes the organization you work at may have some sort of non-compete clause, or they don't like that you have this side hustle. Nowadays it's not as bad, but you run into this challenge of where do you put your time.
mm,
And what I caution people is you could burn out pretty quickly, because
mm,
you go from working your day job to then working again after that. Or you might get stuck in a situation where, let's say I did do work for someone in the evening, I did the work, completed it, then I go to my day job tomorrow, but they're calling me during the day saying, "Hey, this ain't working. What do you do?" You're kind of conflicted. Like, do I gotta leave my day job somehow? Do I gotta take vacation now? So a lot of times, I was being very strategic with my vacation hours. So if I knew
mm.
I was going to go do work, I would go schedule the vacation, then go do that job, and then go back to work the next day.
And that's that's requires a lot of planning ahead.
It does, yeah, yeah. I'm very, very particular about my calendar. Like everything revolves around my calendar.
And okay, so you had this challenge, or okay, because most of not most the clients will be or they were the same as the company you were working for, right?
They could be clients of the company I worked for. So yeah, you have to be careful there. Make sure you're not breaking any, either the non-compete clauses are probably the most common one, but also they may not be the ideal client for the company I work for. But you
Mm,
know, that's an MSP. If you're not working for an MSP, and let's say you work for, I don't know, you work for an internet marketing company, and for sure they're not going to need you after hours,
mm.
and it's pretty flexible. You have more leeway to get clients. It's not like you're gonna do what they're doing to get clients. You're if you're focused on tech, but your main company, your full time employer is internet marketing. There's no conflict there.
Okay, okay, okay. So inbound marketing was, I wouldn't call it one of the strategies, just something that was working for you.
Yeah.
Uh, is there any other strategy or something that you identified in particular that, man, probably I have to be more strategic on this one? And this is something that you also mentioned in one of your videos on YouTube, that I really have to step on this one, because we're not making enough sales, we're not
Mhm.
reaching the target. So what are the things that, let's go, an entrepreneur has to do if they are in this situation? Like, we really have to start making money, otherwise this is just going to be a side hustle.
Yeah. I'm always of like, for me is trying to get clients that I will like to work with. So you have to come up with who your ideal client's going to be, and usually that's a persona that you have to create. Like, who
Mm,
is that person that you're going to reach out to and target? When you do that, you have to become now a salesperson, right? So you're
mm,
an entrepreneur, you might be very technical, but guess what? You're going to have to learn how to do sales. That's just the nature of it, because you cannot get clients if you don't do sales, right? That's a sales transaction. You have to be able to sell yourself, sell your company, sell your skills, and then that person has to go, okay, let's do a deal,
mm.
set up a contract, and then that's when you go, oh, I need a contract. How do I get a contract?
Yeah.
I would always advise having a lawyer build out that contract, because you could get in a bind if you take somebody else's contract and just make it your own,
Mm,
and you don't understand the legalese behind it. You
mm.
you could shoot yourself in the foot and have a problem. And
Okay.
so initially, I use like templates that you can find online. I purchased a template, and I was like, I don't even know what this means, kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
over time, once you get more clients, put some money aside, get a lawyer to kind of go through all of that for you, and
Mm,
they'll really do stuff on your behalf. Like, all right, let me make an agreement that really protects you. For example, when you do more business with clients, you're going to run into clients who just don't pay. Right? What do you do when they don't pay? And
yeah.
it's been 30 days. Now it's approaching 60 days. They still haven't paid. What do you do? Can you charge a late fee? I don't know. In California, that late fee might have some restrictions around how much that late fee should be versus Texas. I don't know what
Mm,
the rules are, and that's what the lawyer's for. That could help protect you. And one way to make clients pay is like, hey, if you're late, this late fee is gonna kick in, and you got to pay that too. And so there's like different strategies you learn
mm-hmm.
with sales. But one of the things I hated doing is cold calling, so I don't do that anymore. A while, I think like a year or two ago, I said I was going to do cold calling. I just don't do that anymore. Um,
How
I
do you
would
get
rather
them?
hire somebody to do cold calling than me do the cold calling.
Okay,
I've done
that's
it.
a strategy.
I've
Did it
done it. I
work?
just don't like it. I'm not a cold caller. And I remember making a list of companies I wanted to call. I was able to get the contacts at these companies, get their name, title, phone number, email address, and I would do like the email, because that's easy, right? It's like, okay, let me send an email. But then you have to learn how to
Uh,
structure a sales email that gets read and not deleted. And being that I'm in IT, I don't know. I bet you a lot of you guys get sales emails, right? And what
Yeah.
do? You don't read them. You just delete them. So me being that guy, I go, okay, well, how do I create an email where one, I wouldn't delete it? And so that's what I was trying to do. And then eventually, like, no one would read those emails. I would then pick up the phone. And I remember calling a CIO at Trader Joe's. Right. I was like, let me try to go after big companies I want to work with. And so I called Trader Joe's on a Saturday, a CIO. And so my logic was most high performing, high level executives do not answer the phone after 7 or 8 a.m. because they're probably in meetings, they're doing work, but I bet you they're at their desk before 7 a.m. because they're like doing their emails, probably getting started for their day. So I called the CIO, I think the CIO of Trader Joe's on a Saturday at 7 a.m. And I had like this call script and he picked up, and I remember being just so nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy picked up. I was hoping to just get the voicemail. And he picked up, and I'm like, wow, there's a human on the other end. And so I go into like the spiel, the call scripts that would go. And he actually said, yeah, go ahead, talk. And so I just started talking. I'm like, man, I'm not even prepared for this. I can't even believe he's saying yes. For one, the call script worked because it got me to the next part. Okay. But then at the end, he's like, yeah, I'm not interested. Don't call me again. Remove me off your list. And I think just the rejection was just so hard on me. I was like, oh man, that didn't feel good. But you know what? It's just like a lesson learned, and also it helps build that thick skin. So to face that rejection, I'm not so much scared of that kind of rejection anymore. If I wanted a cold call, I probably would do it right now if I needed to, right? If you need to make money, you're going to do it.
Okay.
But I was more focused on the strategy. Like, okay, if he answers the phone, what am I going to say? And if he says yes to moving forward with an actual conversation, what am I going to say then? And how do I keep it short enough that he would want to act on it, or get me to the next part, which would be maybe the rejection or the continuation, maybe a meeting. But in this case, I faced a rejection. But that's what I was focused on, is like, okay, how do I go through this? How do I be more prepared so that way I know, think about 5 steps ahead in what would happen. And so I don't do the cold calling anymore. I still focus more on the inbound stuff, which would be blogging, creating videos and stuff. That's all like content marketing.
And so if you said, okay, I'm not doing this, not for anytime soon, so who else was doing? So you hired someone to do cold calling?
No, I didn't. We don't have a salesperson. I am the salesperson. So we don't do any cold calling. We don't do outreach right now. But I am still planning to do it. It'll probably be more tied to email rather than phone calls. I just don't think there's a lot of people say that cold calling still works. It's just not for me. So I do know people who could do it for me. I just haven't pulled the trigger on doing that.
Okay. So just a couple of strategies, right? So that your client knows that you exist, and probably that you can not pitch, but have a first interaction, at least a meeting. Yeah. Like, we do this thing, and probably we can help you.
Yeah.
This kind of thing, and probably in next meeting, okay, we can sell these services. So
yes.
Okay, got it. So the company, you're working fine, and now you have a team. So your responsibilities are changing as the company is growing.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you go like from being like the only person in the company to now, okay, I have to manage these guys, I have to manage so because that's I believe that's an evolution, right?
Yeah, and it's not for everybody, right? So you could be an entrepreneur, but maybe you work on your own, That's entirely possible. I could have kept doing that if I wanted to, but I keep taking on projects that if I keep taking them on, I can't do them by
Mm.
myself. I have to have somebody help me. And so now that I have engineers that can do some of this work, I had to shift towards being more of a leader. And
Mm.
so I I do this thing called just-in-time learning, right? When I was hiring for these guys, I didn't have any kind of leadership skill sets, whatever you would define as a leader, right?
Mm.
But once I hired somebody, that's when I started looking at, okay, what can I learn to become a better leader, or to at least know what those skill sets are as a good leader. I knew what I was supposed to do to not be a bad manager, because I've had bad managers. I just don't do what they do.
Okay. Okay.
But luckily, at the MSP I worked at, they were great managers. So I kind of took their approach, right?
Mm.
And I'm very open with my guys. Like, hey, if you have questions, just let me know. Like, I'm not going to be bothered if you have a question about something. I'm not going to think a question's too dumb. If you don't know something, I'd rather you tell me you don't know, then I
Mm.
will help you know what that is. And so I have books. I still have books right now. Like, I've got like 3 books over here on the side that are just about being a leader, being a
Okay.
good manager. I have one book called How to Be a Great Boss. I just finished that one.
Okay. So, any recommendation that you can give?
Yeah. So, how to be a good boss, a great boss by, I think the last name is Wickman. That one has some pretty good strategies in it. It's pretty good.
Okay.
Um, and then I'm reading another book by Brene Brown called Dare to Lead. That one is a little bit more on the emotional side of being a leader, and
Mm.
not so much being this like hard ass of a leader. the
Okay.
leaders that people don't like, but you have to tap into the emotional sense, emotional aspect of being a leader, so you can be a more effective communicator and solve problems, team problems, a lot
Mm.
more efficiently and quickly. Like, you kind of nip that in the bud. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now, but I still do all the technical stuff as well. So we're small, so I still have to do some of that work as well.
Okay. So, what is the hiring process? How do you bring in, like, how do you identify, okay, this guy is going, I'm okay. So, I have the certification, whatever.
Yeah.
So, what are you looking for in someone who wants to join Packet 6? Let
Yeah.
me put it that way.
I like that question because I always see these posts on LinkedIn, or on social media about people and certifications and hiring. It's like all these things and tricks that people are trying to do to get hired. I actually don't care about certifications. If you have certifications listed on your resume, I don't care, because in my lifetime, I have met so many engineers who have certifications and, the expert level certifications, but they didn't know jack. They were like, they couldn't solve problems. And so I've been in situations where I've been with a CCIE and he couldn't solve the issue, and I stepped in and I solved it. And I'm like, dude, I don't even have a CCIE.
Yeah,
Um,
uh,
but I have learned from other great CCIEs, right? So I know what it takes as an engineer who has a certification. I know what to look for when, if you list those certifications on your resume, I'm going to test you on your certifications. I'm going to ask if you got a CCNA. I'm going to give you some CCNA level questions that you should know. But I don't factor that into the whole interview, right? Because a certification is a point in time exam. If
yes.
you are just trying to become a network engineer and you've got a CCNA but no work experience, I don't believe that you're going to remember all of the details for OSPF. I just don't think. Like, you got to be in it daily to know OSPF. So I don't quiz people on that. When I do
Mm.
an interview, I look more for the thought process, what's going through your mind in a specific scenario. So if you list something like, trying trying to remember what was on some of these resumes. If you list something like, I helped this organization deploy access points and a wireless controller, I'm going to dive into that. I won't go, well, what protocol, what
Okay.
protocols are there with Wi-Fi? What's the frequencies it uses? Because those are all, you can look all those up.
Yeah.
You don't have to remember it, but if you know where to look it up, and then you know, okay, that's what it is, that's fine. But I want to know like your thought process. So I'm gonna be like, okay, well, tell me where you had an issue during that deployment, and what was the issue, and how did you get through it? And so I look at, all right, can this person kind of describe the situation? Were they under pressure? What was the pressure like? Did
Mm,
they maintain calmness? Like, are they able to articulate that? And so if they can articulate that, then great. That sounds like you've got a good thought process. You were able to describe to me the situation. You know your stuff. And that's how I weed out people who just write things that sound great on their resume or have
mm,
AI build their resume. But if you can't talk to the points, then I know you're just, full of BS and you're just trying to get a job. But I look for people who could put in effort and describe what they put on their resume.
mm,
Tell me what their experience was like. Just want to know what goes on in your mind. And also, I look for more of a personable person. So someone I will go for someone who has the drive and willingness to learn and can work with other people over someone who thinks they're a know-it-all, but they're difficult to work with. So
mm.
I'd rather go with that than somebody who's extremely smart but not really going to fit in with what we do or the clients we work with.
Okay, so you are already trying to preserve the culture that you have at the company.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
okay, okay, that's great. There's a lot of variables there,
yeah. There's a
and
ton.
yeah, and I don't know, but for me, I'm an introvert guy. If we meet at the street and we start talking about, I don't know, networking technology, I'm okay. But if we sit for an interview, it might take some time for me to feel comfortable or like
Yeah,
just
that's
okay.
understandable, and I know that too. When I bring people, when I brought people in for an interview, I know when they're nervous, and I will straight up say, "I know you're nervous.
Hmm,
Just shake it off. Like, I'm not here to pressure you. It's not. An interview is a two-way conversation. It's not
hmm,
a one-way street. I very much want the other person to talk and ask me questions because it tells me more about them. I
hmm,
actually do not like when people do not say anything. So if I ask a question like, "Do you have any questions for me?" and they're like, "I don't have any questions," I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't think you're a good fit. Like, you have no questions, nothing. You don't want to know about this job. You don't know what I do. You don't know. You don't have a question about this weird thing I have in the background over here." Like,
hmm. So you want them to feel like really interested in being part of the company, like they
yeah, I
really
think anyone
want.
who's hiring wants them to be interested. Yeah.
Mm, okay, okay. So that's a great tip.
because
And
because I'm gonna invest a lot in this person, right? A lot of my time, a lot of resources to bring them up to speed. Um, they need to be interested.
okay, okay, so you really have to show during the interview that you really want
Yeah,
that. Okay.
and I think it's one way to stand out, right? When I was applying for jobs and went to interviews, like I really put effort into it. I went so much that the moment I was done with the interview, went to the lobby, I would always bring a notebook.
Mm,
Either I always took notes because for one, I just don't like memorizing things, so I always take notes, and then I always had a thank you card. So
mm,
I would always write the names of whoever was in the interview on my notepad, and then I would, when I'm done in the lobby, I would actually write a thank you card and then give it to the receptionist and be like, "Hey, can you hand this to whoever the hiring manager is?" And then they would
okay.
receive it, just to like a little bit of effort, right? Because when, let's say, because most of the interviewers don't think about how also difficult it is to hire people, right?
Yeah.
Let's say out of 1,000 applicants, they're going to interview 25, right? 25 of those guys, they're going to bring them in. So think about what that's like if you were the one hiring, but you have a ton of work that you got to do that week. But someone's like, you got to schedule these 25 people in the middle of your week to talk to them, interview
Hmm.
them, and also still get your work done. So that like 25 people, an hour, 2 hours, that's like a big chunk of your week just
Yeah.
interviewing. And guess what? Like if they're just going back to back interviews, they're going to forget about you the moment the next person comes. So you need to do something that makes you stand out amongst all the other guys. Something a little bit more memorable, like, oh, this guy actually left us a thank you note. The others didn't. And guess what? They might just bubble you up to the top, and somebody might actually like that gesture and be like, this guy put some effort in it. I like someone who puts effort into this, or tried a little bit harder, or this guy wrote a cover letter. None of these other guys wrote a cover letter. I know a lot of people don't like the cover letter, but when I applied, I used the cover letter to actually tell my story, because you can't tell your story on a resume. Your only story is I worked here, here, and here. This is what I did at each of these. But a cover letter, I would take something that I was really proud of and wrote a story on it of why that relates to what who they're hiring and what the job entails. And that's why I'm the better candidate. And so I would use a cover letter to do that.
Okay, great advice there. So
yeah, because the last time I hired, no one submitted a cover letter, and guess what? All the resumes looked the same, and so I was like, okay, it's gonna come down to the actual, like, I have to have multiple conversations with people to see who stands out.
Okay. So cover letter, so it's a great tip, and try to do something memorable for the person who going to interview you. Okay.
Yep.
So just before we wrap up this one, so let's suppose, actually there are probably a couple more questions. What is the vision that you have for Packet 6 now?
Yeah, so I've thought about that a couple times, and more so this year than any other year, just because we added someone this year, and for me, when I think about my early days in my IT career, I didn't like being on call all the time. I mean, I'm still on call, but what I want to get to is where we have a team that can back each other up, but then we still are able to live our lifestyle. Like if I want to go to my son's baseball game on Saturday and not be worried that I'm going to get paged for some outage, that's great. And I want that to be the same for everyone else. But that means we need to have an on-call rotation, enough people, and the breadth of knowledge that needs to be across the board, right, in order for that to happen. So eventually I'd like to get to that point where we're all not working to the bone. You know, not that I don't think we are, but but to a point where we can live our lifestyles, and then also where salary wise we're happy.
Okay. And what it would be like if I want to get into IT. I'm listening to this podcast and I don't know what to do with my life. So I'm in my early, 17, 18. What do you recommend? What are the steps that you recommend me to take? Like, if I want to get into IT, well, should I go to AI, networking, wireless, cloud? Should I take any certification at all before applying to Packet 6? So if you have a roadmap, so what would it be like?
Yeah, so I mean nowadays everyone's on watching YouTube, right? Look at your history and see what you like watching the most. If it's AI, then maybe that's your interest and that's where you could go into. And you just have to kind of take a stab at it, right? When I started, I thought I was really wanting to do Linux systems administration. That's not what I do now. Like, I mean, I manage some Linux systems. I'm okay with it, but it's not the thing that I focus on. You're going to have when you're at that age, it's just so early that you just got to start somewhere. Right. And I think people get stuck in this, situation where it's like, there's so much out there. I don't know where to begin, but you know what? Just cover your eyes and just pick one and just start there. At least when you do it and you know it's not what you want to do, you can cross that off your list and like forget about it. Like, I don't want to do that. And then go on to the next thing. Eventually you'll find a stride and you're going to be like, you know what? I think cloud networking is where I like to be at. It's exciting for me. Then go down that road, explore it a little bit more, go to conferences and really understand whether or not that's what you like to see. Like if you sit in a conference and you're watching a session and it's boring to you, you're yawning, maybe that's not maybe that's not what you want to be in. I don't know. Maybe technology is not it. That's what you might find. But I would definitely say if you're going to go to a conference, the best thing that I've ever done at a conference is actually network with people. So nowadays I go to conferences just to talk to people, not so much to watch every session. I will handpick the sessions I want to see, but I really aim towards finding out who I want to speak to, learn more from them, just communicate with others, network. And that's how I've actually gone up in my career. Is a lot of it is networking with other people, making new friends in this industry. I know you said you're an introvert. I'm also an introvert. Like, if you and I sat together at the conference at a dinner table, we
Yeah,
probably wouldn't talk, right? That's
definitely.
just how I am. And
Yeah.
actually, I that happened to me in the last conference. I was sitting there at lunch, just eating, and someone just sat next to me. He was like, "Can I sit here?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we were just eating. I think we just sat there for like 15 minutes without talking to each other. And then I just got bored. I was just like, "Hey, I'm Rowell. What's your name?" And he was like, "My name's Michael." And I was like, "Hey, nice to meet you." And I was like, "Why are you here? What do you like about this conference?" And then he
Yeah.
told me he was a Wi-Fi guy. And I was like, "Oh man, like I'm a Wi-Fi guy." And then we just kind of hit it off, right?
Mm,
And so you just never know what kind of connection you'll make, which
mm,
also could lead to the next stepping stone for you. You could
okay.
just completely jive with somebody. Um, you'll create a network of people that you could look up to, interact with, encourage others, just stay in communication either through social media or at these conferences. And you just never know that it might lead to your next opportunity. That just might happen. It's
Okay.
happened for me in the past. So, like, guarantee that most of opportunities are created through connections.
Mm,
It's all about talking to people, being genuine about knowing about them, what they're doing, how they are.
mhm.
Um, so all these soft skills are very, very important. So if there's going to be times where you're just going to sit in the back of the conference and not really partake. But eventually, for me, I was like,
Mm,
I want to get to a certain place in my life, right? So I got to
yeah.
do those things that will get me there. And so for me, like every morning I write. So I do I do a couple of prompts, and then I do something called a morning page where you just write whatever comes to mind.
Mm,
I spend 20 minutes just like writing what comes to mind. And sometimes you end up writing about like your goals, where you want to be, but if you always keep that top of mind, you'll end up finding ways that'll help lead you there, right?
mm.
Because you do have to execute on it. It's not just going to happen, right? I
Ye-
could be like, yeah, I want $1 billion,
Yeah.
but is that going to happen just out of nowhere? No.
Is it,
You got to figure
w-
out what it takes to
yeah.
get there. So you got to break it down backwards. So if you want to be a network engineer, break it down in reverse. Here's a network engineer.
Mm,
What does that mean to be a network engineer? Maybe you might take a job description from Google. Be like, what does a Google network engineer do? Okay, here are all the skill sets that they want from this network engineer. Let me go break that down even further. Oh, I have to know Python. What does that mean? So you break it down, right?
yeah.
And also, like, don't always look at the big companies. They're very different from smaller companies or mid-sized companies. Like a Google network engineer is not going to be the same as like a network engineer at a hospital, right? So
Yeah.
there's different skill sets are used across the board. You just got to go find them.
Okay. Is there any certification that you recommend, or is you have? I'm going to have to figure out on my own, right?
Yeah, you mean like
If
picking
there
one?
is any specific certification, like and sets,
No,
or just
no. I honestly think I don't know. Certifications I feel are great for um, like job requirements and partner requirements. Um, just pick one track and
mm,
like be really good at it. Um, just because a job description says CCNA required, whatever, ignore that. A lot of times these people will they'll look at all the candidates and go, we went through like 50 candidates that were all CCNA certified, but they just didn't know what spanning tree was. Guess what? They're going to hire someone who doesn't have a CCNA because they know spanning tree. And so sometimes it doesn't matter. Like all those requirements are often flexible, right?
Okay.
Just because it says, hey, this job requires 3 to 5 years experience, but I only have 1 to 2. Does that mean you should not apply? No, just apply anyways. Because they might find that you never know what the situation might be. Maybe they cannot find engineers with 3 to 5 years of experience. So now they have to change their parameters and open the doors a little bit to find more people.
Yeah.
Maybe they decided, you know what, we'll train them up. If they have 1 to 2 years, we'll train them up so they can get to like that 3-year level experience. Just, they're not hard set requirements. I've been in different organizations where they just couldn't find someone, so they have to be a little bit more relaxed. So there's not one certification I would recommend. If you want to do networking, maybe look at Network Plus and a CCNA. That's kind of what got me there. Although CCNA was really good back in the day because it was all a big chunk of it was just networking. And I think nowadays it's more focused on Cisco, like how Cisco does networking. So that's one thing to consider with vendor certifications. If you look at a Cisco certification, it's going to be like, this is how Cisco does networking. If I look at a Juniper certification, it's going to be like, this is how Juniper does networking. But if you just know how networking works, how routing works, OSPF, BGP, like it's going to be the same at both companies. They just have the knobs and commands different. It's all in different places.
Okay, so there you have. So, Raul, once again, thanks for taking the time, and I hope to have you in the next one.